Welcome into SportsZone All Access here on this Monday, February the 23rd. And what a busy weekend in sports it was. There was a lot of college sports, a lot of high school sports that were played. Wrestling got their regions done, and we covered a ton of that. You can see a ton of stuff on our website. Needless to say, from Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of last week, there is a lot of stories. And Sunday even had some too. So needless to say, you can check that out on our website. But today we're talking mostly college, I should say mostly, from an interesting weekend in college sports, but not all college. We lead off talking hockey, and Olympic hockey, that is. The United States of America, Team USA, wins the gold, making it a sweep this year, Ian, for U.S. hockey. The women beating Canada, the men beating Canada, both I believe by the exact same scores of 2-1 in overtime. Yep. Kind of fun. Mm-hmm. But, as I was thinking about it, it's kind of interesting because I feel like the two games were different where coming into the women's game, the U.S. team was the better team, more talented team. They made some mistakes, but were able to overcome those mistakes and find a way to win it in overtime. I feel like the men's game was the other way around where Canada was expected to be, the better team, right? They have this superstar cast of amazing talent. And then at the end of the day, they didn't overcome their mistakes, and the U.S. was able to pull it off. And I think a big reason for that was Connor Hellebuyck.
Absolutely. 41 saves in the game. The picture that's going all around social media is that one save that he made late in the game where you see the puck behind him, and yet he reaches behind, makes the save. And to say that he also got an assist on the game-winning goal, what else can he do to help win the gold medal for the U.S. on the 46th anniversary of the upset of Russia in 1980, the last time that the U.S. won gold? Just so many storylines, and you think the U.S. jumped on top early. They scored their one goal in regulation in the first couple of minutes of the first period, and then, okay, great start. And then Canada dominated most of regulation. I was especially nervous when Canada had that 5-on-3 advantage for a minute and a half.
Yep.
And yet the U.S. killed off that penalty, perfect on penalty kills throughout the entire tournament. Mm-hmm. That speaks to just how good this team played throughout the entire two weeks of the Olympics.
Well, and one thing I'll give the U.S. is maybe, when you talk about just talent-wise, they might have not been as good as Canada, but their defensemen, the U.S.'s defensemen are second to none. I think, with just the talent that they have in their defensemen alone, was I think a big part of it. And when you put a really good set of defensemen with a great goalie, they can make some pretty special plays. And yeah, the 5-on-3 was pretty crazy. Then they'd go on to score a little bit after that, and to tie the game. And we all know that the third period and the Nathan McKinnon, 10 minutes to go, wide open net. Mm-hmm. For maybe the best player in the world, right? He's insane and whiffs on it. And it's like, okay, Canada's playing a little sloppy. Maybe they'll make mistakes when it's needed. And even the game-winning goal, you can kind of call it a little aggressive by Canada because they tried to get the puck and the U.S. can't. But even then, there was still pretty good defense. They had to fight off a defender just to get the puck and then center it off to Jack Hughes for the win. None of it was easy. It was crazy. I did not watch most of it. I did not get up that early. I did watch the replay of it later in the day and then got to watch it. And it's still amazing how I knew the outcome, and it was like into the game. But no, it's cool. It's really cool. And, the U.S. has never swept before because they just haven't. It's the first time that's happened. And, big day for the U.S. hockey, no question about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a great tournament. And
you talk about great tournament, not to interrupt you, a great tournament, right? Quarterfinals had 3 overtime quarterfinal games. The Canadian semifinal game was fantastic. You're just sorry to interrupt you, but you're not wrong when you say that.
Well, and to go on to the quarterfinals, you have Quinn Hughes scored the overtime game winner for the U.S. there, and then his brother, who had a tooth chipped in the gold medal game, score the game winner for the gold medal. You can't write a better story. Two brothers not only winning gold medals together, you have the Kachuk brothers as well,
Right.
but scoring the game-winning goals
Yep.
in the playoffs of the Olympics.
It's cool.
It's just amazing.
It's
It's speechless.
really cool. It is. And there was a great crowd, a lot of Canadians, a lot of Americans on hand. It was a good game. So I see some people saying, I've seen a lot of people on social media saying 3-on-3 shouldn't be how this is decided. If you'd have told me it was going to come down to 3-on-3, I'd have been a little nervous because Canada's 3-on-3 is the best in the world. It's just, it is.
That's the big difference. You mentioned about how the U.S. defensemen are so good. The U.S. built their team from the back. You have Hellebuck is probably the best goalie in the world.
Yeah.
And that defense, they don't have the star power, the goal scorers that Canada does. You look at the Canada
nobody
front line.
does.
Right. And that's why Canada is always a prohibitive favorite to win the gold medal, because you look at that top line for them and it's like, okay, who's scoring against that? It feels like they're going to put up 4 goals every period because of how good that line is. So just a interesting dynamic. And, well, you hear defense wins championships. That's exactly what it was.
All right, we talked a lot about hockey, but that was cool. We were glad to get to be a part of that, and can say that the Americans, us, this team USA, bringing home 2 gold medals. The NDSU women, though, man, Ian, they looked good. They did. It was a close game at the break, and then you got there second half. You got to see part of that second half, and wow, I mean, the Bison just took over that second half game in a win over the Coyotes.
That they did. Coyotes led by 2 at halftime, muddied the water a lot in that first half, but then the Bison were able to get out in space, get out in transition, and simply put, they knocked down some shots in that third quarter. They went 6 of 8 from three-point land to turn a 2-point deficit at the half into seemingly a 15, 20-point lead in no time. I looked up at the scoreboard. Okay, NDSU had hit a couple shots. They're probably up maybe 8 or 10. It's 17, and they just hit another 3 to go up 20. And wait, how did the lead get that much in that quick at a time? But it's simply put, 3 is better than 2.
Well, and 3 is better than 2. Also, at the same time, when they get that hot, they're tough to beat, and everything kind of runs through Kunin. But for USD, it's a tough loss. It snapped their winning streak, and this is what one of the players had to say after the game.
Transition defense that kind of let them get the lead in the third. Their shooters hit a couple quick ones.
Their shooters hit a lot of quick ones. I mean, they just the way they score at 30 points for Avery Kunin. She's really good. They also had 3 others, Molly Lenz, Jocelyn Schiller, and Kerrigan Asp, who scored in double figures for NDSU. USD was a 2-horse race led by Molly Joyce's 24, Angelina Robles' 22. Both of them been great this season, but just not enough down the stretch for them as they lose by 13. And you said it. The crazy part is, too, trailing by a couple at halftime, and then turns around third quarter, USD scored 21 points. They probably wouldn't have complained too much. That was their biggest quarter of the game. NDSU scored 31, and in that quarter shot 71%. They're the number 1 team in the league for a reason. When they turn it up like this, they're nearly unbeatable. It's just that simple. Let's talk about the SDSU men. They had a huge win, Ian, picking up a W in Brookings on Senior Day. Damian Wilkinson, yo. I seen that play. I was watching the game live, and I went, oh, I hope Kelsey got that shot. That one's a top play candidate for sure. They had some big shots down the stretch to help win this game. Matt Moore's for the lead here. I think he would have flushed it in many other moments. This one, a little more conservative. Gary hits a dagger here in a second, but 49 second-half points, Ian. We've seen them taper off in the second half of games so commonly. And they cooled off a little bit in comparison to what they did in the first half of the game, but still shot 45% in the second half and got themselves a huge win.
Well, you said tapering off in the second half, and I didn't know if you were going to say of games or of the season.
Yeah.
That's the way that this season has gone for SDSU. They were in the top half in the standings for about the first half of the league play, have dipped down to the 7th seed the last couple of weeks. But important now that this win, coupled with USD's loss at Oral Roberts on Saturday, Now they're tied at 6-8 for sixth place in the league standings. And that's going to be important because you don't want to be in a matchup with the 1 or 2 seed in NDSU or St. Thomas in the quarterfinals.
Right.
So whoever can get up to that 6 seed, be it one of them or someone else, if we see a lot of shakeup this coming week,
Yeah, who knows?
going to be important to get that 6 seed.
Here's what they said after the game from Kalen Gary.
We've really just been working on, like, how do we give a little more at the end of the game to, just get stops. And, we're fortunate enough to make a miss at the end there and have a couple shots fall. So, yeah, it's a good feeling.
Well, yeah, it's a good feeling, I'm sure. And you mentioned shaking it up. With St. Thomas losing at Denver, NDSU's locked up the 1 seed. St. Thomas 2, but only a half game ahead of North Dakota. So if North Dakota won, they'd be the 2 and have a half game ahead. Then you kind of got the 4-5 that are you got 2-3 gummed up, 4-5 gummed up. Now you got 6 and 7 that are gummed up between USD and SDSU, and it does not matter what happens Wednesday. The USD hosts Omaha. SDSU goes to Kansas City. Don't matter. That game does not matter at all. It comes down to who wins Saturday in Vermillion. The winner gets the 6 seed. The loser gets the 7 seed. It's that simple because, they could end up tied. And if they do and USD wins Saturday, they have the tiebreaker because they swept. If they split the season in tiebreaker, then it goes, how'd you do versus the top seeds? The top 3 swept USD, while SDSU just got a win over North Dakota, which would be the tie-breaking win. So it's kind of interesting how much shaking up we can have in the Summit League by just kind of a crazy weekend. And we will say that's a tough loss for USD. We had just talked about it last week, how, well, they had that tough loss at Denver, but it's okay. Oral Roberts isn't very good. They should be able to maybe get right there. They didn't look good down in Tulsa.
No, they didn't. Outscored by, I think 69-62 was the final in that one, or 67-62.
Something like that, yeah.
And, not scoring more than 65 points, that's a tough one for the Yotes.
It is. Oral Roberts is struggling to score 70 points a game and almost did. And Oral Roberts is giving up a lot of points. A lot of teams are scoring on them. And that's the part that's, just seeing them struggle against a team that has nobody struggled against, right? It's just that simple. This Oral Roberts team's way down. So we will see how the Coyotes rebound. But again, makes a pretty good one. 1 o'clock on Saturday, SDSU USD men. Winner gets the 6th seed. 6 o'clock Saturday, SDSU USD women. Most likely winner gets the 2 seed. So be a fun day, no question about that. All right, we're going to talk Augustana USF basketball next. Welcome back to SportsZone All Access. Now, we talked about all this crazy basketball that we had in the Summit League, but there was also a couple of big games in the NSIC as the Augustana and USF teams crossed paths. They made the long trip, USF did, 2 blocks down the road to the Elman Center, and woofed. We were in for a thriller. It was a great game, and honestly, if USF could have knocked down just a couple more buckets there in the end of this game, it would have been a thriller, Ian. But it was still a great game, and I'll tell you what, Augustana's, the Vikings, man, they got white hot there in the end of the game and ended up just cruising away for the 104-93 win.
Yeah, 60% shooting in the second half, better than 50% from deep as well. Sam Wrench, the big man for Augustana in that run for the Vikings. And to see them put up 100 points, we knew that the first game was really tight between these two going to overtime. And this one was tight as well. USF jumped out to an early lead in that hostile environment of the Elman Center. And you think, well, okay, like USF came to play. And then Augustana responded, and just a great atmosphere.
Well, and USF came out hot, 53% from the field in the first half, 65% from 3 in the first half. Built a big lead and then kind of cooled off. They had a double-digit lead late. It was like 48-35 or something like that. And Augie scored the last several points of the first half and closed the gap to 5 at halftime, which felt like a win for Augie. Then in the second half, USF came out hot again and had a good lead, had, again, 8 to 10 point lead. And I don't know what the final run was. I think it was like 19-2 or something like that. But Augie scored 61 second half points, which, by the way, is just insane, right? I mean, but they just couldn't miss.
Well, think about in our last segment, right at the end, we were talking about the USD men. They scored 62 points for a whole game.
Yeah.
Augustana scored 61 in half of a game.
It was 85 to 77 with 7:20 to go. Gerard Bosch had just dunked it for USF. 8-point lead with 7:21 to go. And the final score ends up 104 to 93. So you're talking about oh boy, this is math off the top of my head. A 27 to 8 run to end the game for Augustana. They just couldn't miss. It was impressive. It was cool. They had guys in multiple figures. I mean, give some credit to what that coaching staff has done in their second season. Augustana ends up the 2 seed in the South, and overall the second best team in the NSIC. Sam Wrench was fantastic with 37. We do have to give a shout out to Brogan Madsen for USF. He went for 45 and 31 last week, 76 points in 2 games. He was the NSIC player of the week. There's no surprise to that. The women's game also took place, and this one, Ian, there was a little less firepower in this one. This is a team that USF had a feeling of what if. They thought they'd have the best bigs in the league with Wadsworth and Longauger, and now they're just getting by without Wadsworth, who's injured. And Augie, who's still on a big rebuild, they get eliminated from. They needed a win over USF and then some help from some other teams. That didn't happen. USF just got the job done. It was tied at halftime, and then USF outscored them by 1 in the third and 9 in the fourth, pulling away for the 10-point win.
For the Cougars, it's a game that they want to gain some momentum heading into the NSIC tournament this week. They're in the 8-9, so a toss-up game. And then should they advance to the Pentagon, yeah, they'll have to play the 1 seed. But for them to pick up the rivalry win with now having to go on the road for their first tournament game, it's important to try to stack some momentum and some confidence with a team that has a lot of veteran players that maybe can advance to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, no doubt. When you talk about it, USF women will play at St. Cloud State on Wednesday, 6 o'clock in their first round game. The USF men will play Wayne State, 6 o'clock at the Stewart Center. Now, remember, those two played a week ago in the Stewart Center, 119-114 overtime thriller. So who knows what's going to happen in that one. As for the Augie teams, the women, unfortunately, were one of the teams that do not make the playoffs. The men, on the other side, they're one of the few teams on the men's side, 4 of them, that get the first round bye right to the Pentagon, and that's what happens. They'll play 7 o'clock up in the Pentagon, and fun, it could be an in-state matchup. Northern State plays MSU Moorhead. Northern's the favorite. They're the higher seed. If they win, they'll play Augustana on Saturday night. If they lose, either way, Augustana will still be in action. We'll be covering that game no matter what. But, yeah, those brackets are up on our website. And we will later in the week, when we have a little more time, really break down those brackets, what we're seeing, what we think could happen. Well, maybe not that one. I'm not going to make any guesses, but your guess is as good as mine. Well, Ian's got a story to go do, and that's coming up for you tonight. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. So he's going to head out the door. I'll have more SportsZone All Access when we come back. Welcome back to SportsZone All Access. As we mentioned, Ian is headed off to do a good story with the USD women. We'll have that story coming up for you later on tonight. But that leaves me to finish up our last 2 parts of today's show. We're going to talk football. Yeah, we kind of went away for that for about a week. Not too long. Football seems to hang on. It's one of those sports where when it's coming up, we talk about it the month leading up to football. And then when it ends, we still talk about it a month to 4 to 5, 6 weeks after the season ends. And we're talking about it because the Missouri Valley Football Conference just came out, I believe it was Friday, came out with their conference game schedule. And, well, that's not that big a deal, right? We don't usually cover that too much. This year we are because NDSU's not in it. So things look a lot different. Let's take a look at the USD schedule. Now, we do not have the full SDSU schedule because the Jackrabbits have not released their non-conference games. USD has. Here's their whole schedule, minus the last 2 games. We couldn't get it all into our graphic. So anyway, Central Connecticut State will be the first team that USD faces on August 29th. Then they are at Northern Colorado. Then they host Eastern Washington. That's a good get there. That's a tough Eastern Washington team. At Boise State, that's a good team. That's a good FBS team that'll give them some challenge. And then they're at Youngstown State there. Now looking at the back half of their schedule, they host Indiana State as Youngstown got the conference games going. Now Indiana State, Southern Illinois, at Murray State, home against North Dakota. Then they're at SDSU. So it's a Halloween thriller this year for the State U matchup. Then their last 2 games that are not on this graphic, Northern Illinois on November 14th. So their bye week is that November 7th. And then Illinois State, the team that made it to the national championship this last year, that one is on November 21st, the Saturday before Thanksgiving. So yeah, there's USD. It's pretty simple. Here's SDSU's quickly. We do not know their non-conference, so we'll keep it simple. Here's their first 5 conference games. At Illinois State, that's a tough conference starter for the team that just made it to the FCS National Championship. Then it's Murray State at home, at North Dakota, home against Youngstown State, and then the big one, as we mentioned, home against a good USD team on Halloween. Well, that's just a quick glance at what we see for the conference matchups. We'll talk more as we get more details about their seasons. We're going to wrap up today's show when we come back. Welcome back to SportsZone All Access. Here's what's coming up tonight. We'll talk with Angelina Robles, who has shined for USD this year in her transfer season. We'll also talk with Northern State men who are prepping for the NSIC tournament. And then West Central is at Elk Point Jefferson in a good boys basketball game. Well, that'll do it for us here on SportsZone All Access. We'll see you next time.